Thank you for the privilege of being here. When I was 12, my parents grounded me for some reason I don't remember, because whoever remembers that. And I did what I'm supposed to do. When a girl's grounded, she snoops around in her parents' bedroom. And it's common enough, right? For me, I was grounded a lot. So I slip into my parents' bedroom, I sneak up to my mother's dresser, and I open one of her dresser drawers, and I'm digging around one drawer, there's nothing there, I dig in another, and then I end up in the drawer where she has her silky slips folded and some little bars of perfumed French soap, and I thought that was so pretty and soft and innocent and sweet, and I keep digging, and I find a letter and a note that I was not supposed to find, and I came upon the family secret that spun my world out of control forever to this day. She wrote the family attorney asking him to remove something on my birth certificate that said I was born in prison. I learned at that time that my birth mother had been a heroin addict, and I blanked out and went to an emotional lockdown for 20 years after that. I didn't tell a soul what I learned. And the other thing I did was became afraid of my own story. And some people will say, well, what scared you was prison, and it wasn't what scared me. What scared me was myself. I was afraid of my own sorrow, my own grief. I knew nothing, I remembered nothing. I knew I was adopted. Multiracial in a white family, that's easy to figure out. My dad is 6'5", I'm not. I have a couple inches of heels on. And I knew that I was adopted, and I'd been told that, but that was it. I sailed through life, my early teens and young adulthood, filled with fear, and it was in that early stage that I met my life partner, who's become my life partner, which is uncertainty. So what I learned later, because I took that fear, and I realized I was either going to kill myself or someone else at a very, very young age, I started to follow my birth mother's footsteps, but I slowly learned her story. A heroin addict doing what addicts do. She was pregnant on one of her many sentences. I'm the face of millions. There are 2.7 million children with a parent prison today. And for women, 800% increase in the incarceration rate, which is why I founded the unPrison Project to advocate for community alternatives for drug treatment and mental health resources. Because with that, my birth mother would have been getting care in the community, and I would not have been born in prison. So my story takes a unique turn. I wasn't removed right away. She kept me for a year. Now some people will say, well, that sounds so sad. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, it was like a slumber party, 200 women and myself and some COs. How bad is that? Because a baby needs love. And I got that love. So the fear in me and the uncertainty had nothing to do with her being in prison. It was the trauma of removal after a year. My story, like many children today, I went into foster care and later was adopted. None of that is wrong and none of that is bad. It's the movement and the story that I was left with. So I sailed through life terrified that my cells were filled with grief and I had no idea what I was grieving. And the sorrow, I'm a parent now, so I know how much bonding happens in there. And for me, I think that's a gift that I was allowed that. We have, I believe, 10 or 11 nurseries in this country with babies born in prison. Almost 10% of women who are sentenced are pregnant. So this is not a problem going away. And I meet people today and they hear my story and they'll go, well, we never thought about that. What happens to a baby? And I said, well, women are pregnant, right? So it's only natural. And we have to face it. Most are impacted by addiction, drug and alcohol abuse. Most have mental health resources like my birth mother, and we know it's treatable, and I'm standing here saying that because I followed my birth mother's tracks. I've been clean and sober over 20 years, but I did what thank you. I say that because I feel I'm putting a face to not only cleaning up, but to what a face looks like of a woman born in prison. I can't tell you how many people I meet and they go, well, you don't look like someone born in prison. My answer is, so what does that look like exactly? Tell me what it looks like. But I meet that all the time. So I'm in town here and I'm checking in. I grew up in Seattle, so I traveled doing this around with the unPrison Project, and I'm always asked at a hotel or a car rental, so what are you doing here? And I usually will say, well, I'm doing some service work, or I'm eventually will get to say I'm speaking, because this is what I do, and they'll say where, and I'll say a prison. So I hear, and I keep thinking this is a teachable moment, because always it ends up to, why would you go there? Are you afraid? And I say, what are you afraid of? We should be afraid of what we are not changing in this country, not afraid of who we are putting inside. Thank you. I carry that message everywhere. And I appreciate that support, because I think if we don't speak it out there, I was born with a job to do. That's how I've grown to look at the uncertainty that I started. It didn't start at age 12. The day I was put in this world, I had an uncertain life. My birth mother fought like crazy to keep me. And I live with that conflict that a lot of people have to live with, sort of impossible choices. I'm asked, do I wish could I have stayed with her forever throughout her 10-year sentence? And I do. And she wanted me to. But on the other hand, I'm glad that I was removed, because I wouldn't be who I am today, and I wouldn't be carrying the same message. So I live with irreconcilable choices, and we all have that. But the secrecy I've begun to live. I've only recently been telling my story in public. I've been speaking inside prisons forever, what feels like forever, 10 years, because I know I won't be judged here. But I can't tell you the things I hear on the outside about myself and my birth mother. So I have two stories to say. One is about a recent uncertainty. I was diagnosed with hepatitis C. People hear my story and they say, oh, it started in prison, and what I say is my story continues. I was a former IV drug user, and I'm living with those consequences. And every day is uncertain, not in terms of my health, because I feel well and healthy, but I have an incurable disease that is now curable, and that has only come up in recent months. But I've learned to face things with courage rather than fear, and I got that from my story. So my story has become a gift. A lot of trauma can be turned into a gift. My other story that I want to close with has to do with my teen daughter, my youngest, who, when she was 5 years old, came home from kindergarten and said, we had show and tell today, and I told everyone you were born in prison. And you know how kids are. So for her, to her it's saying like I was born in Canada or somewhere that seems far away. That's normal, because they know my story. They know the parts that are appropriate in it. So I said, what did they say? What did your class say? And kids will judge you by how you look as a parent. And she said, nothing. They just stared at me and they were quiet. So I took it as a teachable moment, because I thought I need her to know that there's nothing to be afraid of. And a few days later, I'm walking into the hall. A mother comes up to me. My daughter sort of scoots ahead into class, and this mother said, your daughter's making up stories again. And she actually did. That was just normal. She totally took after me. And the woman didn't say anything. And she got red in the face, and she took a step back, and then I started to think, I believe I know what it is, but I'm not going to do all the work for her. And I said, what happened? And she didn't say anything. So then I had to start peeling it out. Did she say something about prison? And the woman just nodded her head. And then I said, did she say something about heroin? Because by the time kids tell a story, it's all mixed up. So I have no idea really what she said, but I knew what the core would be. And the woman nodded her head, and I said, well, she's not making that up. And I thought, this has to be another teachable moment. And I told her, I am the same mother that did reading buddies with your kids 2 days ago as I am today, just because you know where I was born. I'm no different. And then I turned it on her and I said, so where were you born? And we started talking about that. But I thought I have to put a face on what that is. I'm a product of our country's addiction to mass incarceration, and I was born with a job to do, but I believe it is everybody's job to break that stigma and to do something about that. And it can start today. It is starting today, but it needs to continue. When the vibe of the event is gone and it doesn't feel glamorous, we need to change that. Thank you.